Hi guys, so just recently I invested in this Blu-ray box set of the first 6 Wrong Turn movies, and I've been dying to get stuck into them because I watched most of these films years ago and I remember them being a really fun, offbeat little set of horror films that I kind of liked, and yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how they stand up for me these days. At least one of them I haven't seen. I've not seen any of them since watching the remake, which came out like almost 3 years ago now, so it has been a while. My memories have faded a little bit of most of these entries, but yeah, we'll see how we get on with them. Starting today with Wrong Turn 1. This is a very, very simple franchise in terms of the concept behind it. It's essentially Friday the 13th meets the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, in my opinion. So we've got this group of mountain men, diseased mountain men, who live in the woods of West Virginia, which, if you don't know your geography, is a very, very large stretch of forest. And they are very, very distanced from society, these people, but anybody who accidentally takes a wrong turn into their domain is likely to get killed and quartered and have their teeth put in a jar and put in the fridge. They are not people you want to come across. In this first movie, we have 6 good characters who get lost in the wrong area, the mountain men area, and we have 3 mountain men themselves. So it's a 6 against 3 contest, if you like, and that is the movie. It's very, very straightforward. It was directed, this first one, by Rob Schmidt, and it stars, among other people, Desmond Harrington and Eliza Dushku. And watching this film again last night, it just brought it back to me just what star power these 2 particular actors had back in 2003. I mean, they've gone on to have decent careers, I suppose. I did check out their wikis last night. They've not quite made it to the absolute A-list, though. You don't see them in blockbuster movies or anything like that. But wow, they were really, really good back in the day. They just have a real presence in this movie. They don't have to do any great acting necessarily, apart from one scene in a waterfall maybe. But they're just a calibre of actor, I think, that probably the rest of this franchise is not going to have, if I'm going to guess what's coming up in the sequels. But yeah, they are both absolutely fantastic. Desmond Harrington was on a stretch of horror films in the early noughties, like Ghost Ship and The Hole and this, and then he kind of drifted into TV eventually. Didn't quite fulfill his full potential. Eliza Dushku has done this, that and the other over time. You wouldn't call her a household name, but if you follow movies, you probably heard of her. All the characters in this film are pretty well realised. There's a small amount of them, so we can get to know them quite a bit, or at least the main quartet who survive into the second half of the film. I think Desmond Harrington's character gets the most work because we see him on his journey to the woods, whereas all the others, we just discover them after 10 minutes or so. The initial trip that Desmond Harrington takes in his car, he comes across this petrol station, and he meets this guy who is not one of the mountain men, by the way. He's got the worst teeth I've ever seen in my life. I'm not sure if it's makeup or whether this is actually the actor's teeth, but God, it's disgusting. He's got like 3 teeth. One of them's over here, one of them's there, and another one's there, I think. And it's just the most vile thing I've ever seen in my life. Like, it's easily the most disgusting thing you'll see in this film. And this is a film where people get shot with arrows, people get barbed wire ripping half their faces off, people get their legs cut off, and yet none of that stuff is as horrible to look at as this guy's teeth in the first 5 minutes. Like, when I went to bed after watching this film last night, I was brushing my own teeth, and all I could think about when I was trying to process the movie was this guy's frigging teeth. I don't know if he comes back in any of the other films, but God, vile. All jesting aside, this first film is really strong. It's so well paced. It's just a really, really exciting adventure from the minute that all the characters are together at their various crash sites in the woods, and we get sequence after sequence throughout this film that are all just very, very well staged, well thought out. There's not a single weak segment to this movie. I think my favourite part is when the characters discover the mountain men's cabin, And the brilliance of this scene is twofold, really. So firstly, the initial discovery when the characters are just walking around the rooms and it's all grimy and dirty. But at first it's like, well, okay, this is gross, but this is the sort of thing you might see in the middle of the woods, I suppose. And then there's this wonderful moment where at least three of the characters all discover something really sinister at the same time, but in different parts of the building. Like one of them discovers a corpse in a bath. Somebody else looks in the fridge and sees all these gross things on the shelves, like spleens and things like that. But they have these discoveries simultaneously, and the camera just goes between the three of them. It's really well thought out how it's been done, this. And then we get the second brilliant part of the scene when the mountain men turn up and the characters quickly scarper under the beds and in cupboards and things. And the next 3 or 4 minutes is just full of the most unbelievable tension. Like, it's just palpable. Like, I'm watching this thinking, are they going to get found out? Like, I'd seen this film before, so I should know how this scene ended. And yet, I was thinking to myself, I'm sure they get found out before this scene is over. And yet, I can't remember exactly where. So I'm just completely on the edge of my seat, just watching this. Absolutely brilliant. The mountain men themselves are genuinely scary in this film. Now, I'm pretty sure as the series goes on, they become more cartoonish. You see a lot more of them. They sort of suffer the same fate as the villains from the Texas Chainsaw films, sort of. But in this original, at least, they are very well handled. Like, you don't see their faces for at least half of this. They're kept a mystery, and therefore they are scarier. You see more of their faces towards the end, but it's fine at that point because we're moving into the action-heavy part of the movie. Definitely the most noteworthy of the three that we get here is the one played by Julian Richings. He's the weedier looking one of the mountain men, but it's already established here that he's a character who for whatever reason can take loads of damage and still get up, but it's still kept within believable bounds, I'd say, in this first movie. I just absolutely love Julian Richings. I've seen him in about 30 things, like TV or movies. He's one of these people who just, all of his parts in anything just seem to be really small and yet really memorable at the same time. Like, he makes his mark in this film, even though he doesn't really say anything. I also remember him from Cube. He's the guy who dies first in Cube. It's like the most memorable part of that film. And I also remember him from Supernatural as well, when he played Death. It's not just the tension parts of this movie that are done really well. The action is so well handled as well. I mean, this feels like a fairly medium budget horror film, and yet when it comes to the action, it's like they had a little bit more money in the locker just to make things even better. Like, just random shots of characters running through the woods, the angles that they use to track these people, and how it matches up with like a vehicle coming down the road at just the right time. There's a certain quality to it, you know, and you've got explosions in the latter half of the movie and some great gore and carnage. And actually, probably the only slightly cheap part of the whole thing is the prologue, involving two people climbing up this rocky crag and getting killed. I don't know if that was added in very late in the day, maybe. I don't know. But yeah, the action is done really well in this. I love the arrows as well that are used. So suddenly, arrows come out of nowhere in this film and almost kill characters, but there's a really satisfying kind of like really realistic arrow sounds in my view anyway. And what happens is an arrow will suddenly come and like plant itself in the tree trunk right next to a character, and then there'll be this weird pause where a character will sort of try and process how they almost got skewered, and then they'll react and panic. But it's really cool. This happens like several times in the movie. At one point, this cop appears on this road, and the way that he's taken out with an arrow to the face just looks so gory and satisfying, the way that they've done that. I love how in the finale there's a fight in the mountain men's cabin. So we go there for the second time, but you get a completely different horror experience from what we got earlier in the film. So the first trip to the cabin, it's all about the suspense and are they going to get found out? And then the second time, for the last 5 or 10 minutes, it's all fighting and excitement and fire and stuff like that happening. So a lot of variety in this film. A great sequence as well with a watchtower that I'm probably don't have time to go into, but yeah, just so much good stuff. And I like how the weapons of the mountain men are kept realistic in this first film. So they use rifles, arrows, spike traps to ruin tires on cars. You know, it's all the sort of believable shit that freaks in the woods might have in their shed to make your life a misery, but it's not outlandish. I'm sure in later films there will be some stuff that just defies belief. I'm sure there is, looking back into my memory banks. But for now, these are just realistic villains using realistic equipment, and it just makes the movie all the better. It feels like a very realistic movie for the most part, actually. As I move towards wrapping up, I'm just trying to think of some negatives for this film, just for a bit of balance, but it's not easy. There's no soundtrack to speak of, I guess. That's one thing I could say. I would have liked a little bit more character work at times. I think Dushku's character is a little bit shortchanged compared to Desmond Harrington's character. The only time Dushku really gets to open up as a character is in this one scene behind a waterfall, and you can see her facial contortions going in several different directions. You can tell that Dushku has considerable acting talent in reserve that she's not fully able to bring out in a movie like this. The early kills, the two characters who die straight away, I think more could have been done with them. They could have been kept in the movie a little bit longer, I feel. And one of the deaths there is not actually shown, which is a little bit of a shame, but it just goes to show how much I'm struggling to come up with negatives when I'm talking about character work. When earlier on in the review I was saying how much I enjoyed the characters and how much of a benefit to this story it was that we have so few of them, but it's really good, this film. I remembered it being decent. I remembered it being a decent start to this franchise, but I think it was better than that for me this time when I got all analytical about it. I just really enjoyed it, like, all the way through, and this is a really solid start. The rest of the movies are going to find it difficult to topple this one, but for now, let's get to the bag of terror and find out what sort of score I'm going to give this movie. I will quickly say that I'm not going to get my Blu-ray out and show that again, and in fact I probably won't get that out for the remainder of these reviews, actually, because it's a German release. I couldn't possibly comment on the features on any of the discs because I don't think there's a way to turn them into English, which is a shame. But the picture quality, audio quality is reasonable for a Blu-ray transfer. I guess not the best on this original film, but it's at least a little bit better than the DVD that I used to have of Wrong Turn 1. Right, let's get to that score. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 bloody X's out of 5, and I wasn't far away going to 4.5. I really had to think about it, but I just restrained myself a little bit. But excellent film, really enjoyed it, and I am looking forward to getting on to Wrong Turn 2, which I remember being considerably lighter in tone than this one, but we'll see. Until next time, cheerio, bye-bye.